So thank you to everyone that is listening to us. This is our second Stellium podcast. This one is going to be about external identities. It's going to go a bit more, I would say, technical.
Yeah,
but I
a bit
don't
more technical.
Yeah, but I don't want to scare anyone. We today we'll be talking about a topic that is very close to our hearts in most of the customers that we are currently working with, and we think that this is a very important topic. Do you want to talk a bit about this topic, Ivan?
Yeah, of course, it's something that we found. I don't say every day, but most organizations, they always deal with some external identities, so there is always something to govern around that. And I think most organizations are used to control their accesses with Active Directory. So this new way of working, I think it's something that is going to be the future or the present already. And I think this is the goal today, talk about what are the features available.
So, and today we actually got someone to join us. We're very happy and proud about that. I don't know how this really happened, but it did. So we have two special guests directly from Microsoft. The first guest is Robin Goldstein. Robin?
Yes, so hi everyone, and thanks Tiago for hosting us here on the Stellium podcast. I am a partner at Microsoft, and I am one of the product management leaders in Microsoft's identity division, which is where we design, build, and operate all of the identity services that run Microsoft's applications and all of the applications of our customers that connect to identity. My role in the team is to lead our cloud authentication efforts, and I am currently very focused on our external identities offerings for any external facing identity scenarios. So those that are not involving employee identity, but primarily those concerning partner collaboration use cases, as well as customer facing or any external facing identity services. And I've been in this role for a few years now. It's an exciting and challenging space to work in. We really feel that identity is at sort of the center of our customers' security strategies, among other things. It's a gateway to cloud for many of our customers. So just excited to be here and happy to be participating with you.
Great to have you, Robin. Thank you so much for having accepted our invitation. We also have Elisabeth Olsen. Elisabeth?
Hi, I'm Elisabeth Olsen. I'm a lead program manager in the Azure Active Directory team, specifically focused in the governance space. I work on features that help make sure that the right people get access to the right resources at the right time, and that includes both employee users as well as external users, and making sure that all these external people that you've let in aren't getting access to too many things, and that you have a way of getting them out of your system when you're done collaborating with them.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Elisabeth. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
So without further ado, sorry?
I just want to say thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours. So I would like to obviously start off. Most of our clients, they are obviously using what you call an Azure AD standard tenant. So something that is very, I would even say transparent almost to the customers, because sometimes they don't even know it exists.
Well, I think there are two different cases. Is clients that know actually that they have a standard Azure AD tenant, and others that they realize that they have a B2C because it's explicitly created. It creates a bit some confusion sometimes. Do I have one tenant, the other tenant? Is it together? Is it separate? So maybe we can already start with the basics. So the differences between an Azure AD standard tenant and the B2C one.
All right. Yeah, I'll take that, and then I think we can hand to Elisabeth a little bit later on when we're getting into some of the specifics on how the governance for these works. But just at a high level, Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's cloud identity service, and we serve hundreds of thousands of companies, millions of users every day use this service to authenticate to the apps that they use, pretty much daily at work. for their productivity and for collaboration. In the Azure AD system, we have two different products, really. We have a product for enterprise, which is the Azure Active Directory service, and then we have a version of that product, which is the Azure AD B2C service. And it turns out that these are very, very similar. They're based on the same cloud technology, but we have two different kinds of tenants or directories, really. One that's optimized for that employee use case, and that's what you refer to as the Azure AD standard tenant, if you will. And you're right, it's more or less transparent, but really what we're referring to there is just the capabilities in the directory for any customer who uses Azure AD to master their identities in the cloud. And then for customer-facing scenarios, our Azure AD B2C product, which is also based on the same directory technology, adds additional scale. So for customers who are doing applications that might be consumer-focused, or they might be running at significantly high scale, have the need to store millions and millions of users. An Azure AD B2C app mastered in an Azure AD B2C directory might be a more appropriate choice. And just to give you an example of the differences between those, an Azure AD B2C customer might use that product to do something like run, for example, a large sporting event where millions of fans might be logging in. They might be checking stats. They might be running a virtual bracket with each other. They might be purchasing tickets, and something that might be expected to operate with effectively no limits on who can sign up and be a part of that directory. Whereas an Azure AD standard directory used in business, will tend to have a finite number of users who are members of the organization, the number of employees that you have in your company, and that's typically fairly stable. And then what becomes the external user base in that case might be the company's partners or vendors or suppliers, which tend to be, in many cases, a larger number than the actual employee base, but they don't necessarily scale to the extent that you would need for example, a public user-facing directory.
Right. Thank you. That was quite detailed. And would you say that a lot of the features that you make available in the B2C type of tenants, I don't know about what you think, Ivan, but sometimes I feel that most of those features are quite more innovative and allow much more customization than actually in the standard tenants of
I think sometimes it can be this, or it happens also that we work mostly with the standard tenants. So sometimes we look at some use cases that we would like implemented from the B2C, and that's why maybe either it's first comes to B2C or we are biased because we only look at the standard tenant features.
Yeah.
So if we were to ask, is it our impression, or does it feel like the B2C tenants normally gain more rich features when it comes to identity experience and customization versus the standard tenants?
Well, as I mentioned, the use case for those B2C directories and tenants tends to be more consumer facing. And initially when the system was designed, we understood that the customers of ours who were using that product were much more interested in richly customizing all aspects of the identity experience. So it is fairly common to see branding, styling of the experience that's very particular to the external facing persona, if you will, that company has and what they project to their end users. There's marketing teams involved. There's usually kind of branding guidelines that they have for all parts of their experience, and it's important for the identity aspects. So some user experiences like sign up and sign in to blend in very, very well. So that's the first thing that we understood was important in a consumer experience. In addition, there are often additional requirements in terms of business logic or identity proofing, or sometimes the users have accounts in a number of different places, and those things need to be reconciled. So there was some extensibility requirements that emerged, as we were designing the system for those use cases. Now, what we've learned since releasing B2C is that a lot of those demands now exist, even when you have a workplace scenario where you have employees who interact with partners. They don't necessarily just want to collaborate with SharePoint or Microsoft Teams. Of course, those are very important to us. But often, you have situations now where an enterprise may have a partner-facing portal, and they want that to be branded and customized. And so we are looking to bring, in fact, we have started bringing more of those customization and extensibility features into the main directory, as we've gone further down this road. And it's one of the reasons we kind of envision ultimately these systems coming together, because at the end of the day, it is end users who are interacting with systems, and the more consumer grade those experiences are, the easier it is going to be for users to be successful at the tasks that they're doing.
Right, and it's a very interesting point, because we were actually wondering, how does Microsoft choose and select those type of features? I mean, what makes its way from a B2B tenant into the Azure AD standard tenant? How do you manage those kind of priorities, and how do you gather those types of requirements from your clients and from your partners, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a very high bandwidth relationship with a number of our customers. Typically, we work with Microsoft's most strategic customers first, and often the requirements that they express to us signify the requirements that we're going to find throughout our ecosystem. But we actually work with them closely. So sometimes they just they might ask us similar questions to the ones that you're asking us now, like, why are these things separate? We view it as all the same. We also are constantly learning about new scenarios that sort of didn't exist when we started Azure Active Directory. But I would say in general, our vision right now is that all features would be available for all use cases. So ideally, we wouldn't have these distinctions at all. The choice to bring features from one system to the other only exists because we have two systems. So the way I look at it is we are on a path to unify. And in the meantime, the way we select the features is based on what will bring immediate value to customers who are using Azure Active Directory. So for example, we have customers right now who are expressing requirements around, say, vendor and supply chain, then we would bring the features first that help them accomplish those scenarios, and then adding on to that, we are bringing on the features that would help them accomplish like a customer IAM scenario. But we believe that one accrues to the other. We'll just start first wherever we can add immediate customer value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, absolutely. And just before continuing, you mentioned path to unify. Is it wrong to assume that one day the two things could converge into a single type of tenant, or do you always see this type of difference between both of them?
Well, I think in terms of functionality, we certainly do envision that our product would deliver all of the value on a single stack and a single directory technology. We know that our customers don't always mix their end users, with their employees. So we would still anticipate that the product would get used, in different ways depending on where the identity services are being applied. But from a technology perspective, it is our goal and it is our vision that you would someday not have to make a choice. It would just be technology from Microsoft's Identity Cloud, and then you use the features that apply to your situation.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. I wanted to ask this question, but you preceded me.
I always precede you.
So let's focus maybe on Azure AD standard tenant, because I think it's also the one that we use the most in our day-to-day work. Could you tell us the preview features that are being cooked in this type of directory?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll ask for Elisabeth's help here as well, because there's some quite a few interesting features available in preview today for B2B collaboration. But I'll just mention that some of the work that we have done recently under the sort of our sub-brand name Azure AD external identities has recently become generally available. So for example, there's a new scenario available, or a new set of features available for creating a self-service sign-up experience, and we've released that to general availability. That works with not only Azure AD external identities, but also social identities, particularly Facebook. We have a Google provider, and users can also log in a passwordless manner with an email-based account using one-time passcodes. There's a couple of aspects to that experience that are still in preview. So we're finishing up work. We're actually finishing up the work to integrate that well with passwordless email-based accounts, and also making that work for users with a Microsoft consumer account. There's a number of other investments that we're making that are going to enable that experience to connect directly with identity governance as well. So we're pretty excited about that experience. In addition, we've had a direct federation feature in preview for a while. We hope that one is going to become generally available in the next quarter or so. But we've made some improvements to that experience lately. So we definitely encourage those who want to do federation with external users who are in a SAML-based directory or a WS-Fed-based directory, and try those features out, and give us some feedback before we take it to GA. So those are some of the things that our teams have been working on, on the authentication side. And then Elisabeth, I think you've got some interesting features that are in preview now around the management piece too. Maybe you'd like to share that.
Yeah, I think the couple features that I really want to take a moment and talk about are in access reviews. We recently released a feature that allows you to have a review of any user in any group that's an external user, which can be really powerful, because then IT doesn't have to go and keep track of like which groups have external users and which ones don't, and set up individual access reviews. They can just have one access review that looks across their entire system and reviews the right people on a particular cadence. And that can be really helpful for them to keep on track of their overall guest population. And the other feature that I think is really interesting I wanted to talk about was in entitlement management. We recently introduced a preview around asking questions of people who are signing up for resources. And so when your external users come in and say, hey, I'd like to have access to these things, you don't have to just say, well, your name is Sue and you come from Contoso, so I guess that's fine. Like, you can actually ask like, hey, how did you hear about us? Where are you from? What's your purpose here? Like, and different kinds of questions that make sense to your scenarios. And you can have different types of questions, like multiple choice questions or open-ended questions. And that allows you to make better decisions about who should have access and what kind of access they should have, and onboard them to your directory in a cleaner manner. So I'm really excited about that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
hey,
Elisabeth.
did you maybe want to mention something about the reset account functionality? Because I think that's newly in preview as well.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. In my core B2B case, like beyond governance, just like managing your B2B accounts, we also have a couple features that are also really interesting around, like Robin said, being able to reset a B2B account. And so that way, like if your email account changes, or like maybe you have a partner and they used to be on one Azure AD tenant and then they decided to move to a different one, or they were on-prem and now they've moved to the cloud. This is a way for you to keep their account in your system working properly without having to delete it and re-invite them and re-add them to all the resources that they had. And so that can be a really powerful thing to maintain those guest accounts. And kind of in a similar vein, we also know there's a lot of customers who have partner accounts or vendor accounts that they've been working with for years, maybe even before B2B was an option. And so they gave local credentials and like, here's your username, here's your password. And now that they're using B2B, they'd like to actually have everybody that's external use B2B. And so we have this ability for you to invite these internal users and turn them into B2B in place, so that it makes it so they don't have to use their internal password anymore. They can get single sign-on from their home account, but still have access to all the things they had before as well. And so that's a really powerful way to get a better overall story around your guest usage and have a better experience both for your guests coming in and give them a seamless, more secure experience, as well as an easier experience for your IT perspective to manage everything and not have to handle as many things like password resets or account management.
It's funny you're mentioning the reset accounts because at Stellium we actually very recently updated our domain in our Azure AD tenants, because previously we were stellium.ch and now we are stellium.consulting. And it's funny because our accounts are added in a lot of the tenants of our clients, where we currently still now have the stellium.ch email. And a lot of our clients start saying, I cannot find you in our teams because I'm trying to search you by your new email, but you're not registered with your new email. It's still the old one, so they cannot find us. So it's very interesting that this functionality of resetting the B2B account in order to kind of refresh all the data coming from the real parent tenant is there. Is this a self-service, or it needs to be an IT admin of the tenant where the B2B user is added?
Yeah, so right now it needs to be the IT admin that takes the action because it changes how you work in their directory. And so we want them to be aware of that and control of that. But it's an area that we're constantly thinking about, how do we make this more automatic? How do we make it easier for them to delegate things out while still giving them the control they want over how accounts work and making sure that we don't like give up too much of what they want to be in charge of. And so there's always going to be that balance that we play around with.
And on a segue to that, we know how IT departments like to control things. So
yeah, normally they come from a centralization culture, let's say. So it's not bad per se because they want to control and make sure that the governance is applied. But I think now with these, let's say, automation capabilities and governance that are brought to the external collaboration, then do you think this will improve the way IT departments will enable some self-service capabilities to the business, maybe?
I think that's definitely a big part of what drives us, is to try to find that balance, because you're right, this is kind of a mind shift for a lot of IT admins to come to the cloud and to delegate out responsibilities. But at the same time, like, that allows the business to be more effective and allows the business to run faster. And so we have to make sure that we do the right thing and make sure that like all the processes that need to be followed are in place, all the controls that are needed are there, but still like we get the right things done and we allow people to get their jobs done faster and more effectively.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is really great that I want to highlight is that actually now I think many organizations are creating the accounts internally in their Active Directory, even for external users. And the fact that they can, let's say, migrate this with this synchronization to the cloud to guest users, then it brings benefits from a licensing standpoint and also from the governance with all these features.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of our main drivers there, is we knew that a lot of customers, as they came to the cloud, were in this situation. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to get the best value out of the new cloud system they were using.
Okay. Absolutely. And kind of tying it back to your original question around, how we choose features to bring, from B2C to Azure AD. As we've talked to customers about this, we hear consistently, it's not enough just to bring the experience. It's not enough just to bring, registration or branding. Like, there has to be the management piece that comes along with it in order for it to be valuable for all of the scenarios they have. Right.
It needs to give you the proper tools for governance and administration, right? You mentioned throughout the answer about some of the new features that are available today in preview. You mentioned something that was sign-up experience. Now, could you detail a bit what is that experience and what kind of use cases does it open to a standard tenant?
Absolutely. I mean, in brief, it adds the ability for a tenant to enable a sign-up user experience for apps. So when you have an app associated with your tenant, let's say it's a partner-facing app, an external-facing app, you can enable for that app a self-sign-up experience. And what that does is it means that when users go to, say, the portal or the mobile version of that app and they try to authenticate, if they don't have an account in the tenant, they'll be offered the option to create one. And so they can create their account using their existing work account. It could be another Azure AD account, or they could create their account using a social identity that they may have an account with. They can also create that account, as I mentioned earlier, with just their email, and they'd be granted access, using a one-time passcode. And once they and the experience for that sign up UX, which is hosted by our cloud service or rendered by our cloud service, is customizable by the IT admin or the app owner, so they can make the company branding match their company's look and feel. They can customize attributes for the sign up form, so whatever data is required for users to be collected upon sign up in order to create an account can be presented to the user, and they can fill in that data. That data can be validated through API calls, so there's extensibility in the experience. We call it API connectors, but essentially you can stand up a verification API in the middle of that sign-up flow, so that if an attribute isn't filled in, or if it's filled in correctly, or if you could also add additional security checks to verify somebody's identity. You could connect to an approval workflow or an access review type of workflow as a part of that. And so those are the primary aspects to what sign-up adds today. And then, as I said, the next step is to make that an automatic for those tenants who use our entitlement system, to make that connect up directly to entitlements.
Okay. So to see if our audience understands, and even if we understand, what you're basically saying is that if a customer today has an application like ServiceNow being federated by an Azure AD standard tenant, they could eventually configure the sign-up experience of adding a new external user to ServiceNow, to the ServiceNow application.
Potentially, it could stand in front of any application. Although, I will say it's as we were designing it, we had in mind more bespoke applications. For example, if you're a manufacturing company and you have franchisees who need to access apps that pertain to your manufacturing process. Those were certainly the types of scenarios that we see all the time, or where you have users who are applying for just access to your partner services or access to applications for a certain role. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we see. But yes, certainly, this type of scenario could be used for a ServiceNow type of use case.
Okay. And I need to be honest, I already started playing around a bit with the sign-up experience. It's already in preview. It's available for us to play around with it. I noticed that, unfortunately, Microsoft applications are not yet allowed. I'm saying yet as a hopeful prayer, but I noticed that we're not able to yet customize the sign-up experience for Microsoft applications. As an example, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, OneDrive. Do you see any possibility of this type of experience becoming available to be customized for these types of applications? And if yes, when?
Well, it's when you talk about Microsoft, what we refer to as our first-party applications, it's always a complicated conversation because they each have their own identity, as as a brand, right? Teams has a brand identity in addition to Microsoft, SharePoint, et cetera. So, each of those has a sign-up experience, which is about creating an account in Microsoft system. That's kind of how those Microsoft apps were designed. We currently aren't having an active conversation about how to replace that yet. But we anticipate, with flexibility in the system, that we'll be adding around branding and styling of the experience for sign-in in particular, which is a key part of this. It's not just the sign-up piece, but the sign-in piece, that those systems and customers of ours who use those systems will be able to have more control over what sign-up looks like, even in front of Microsoft apps. I know that's a long answer, but it's to say this is when we consider how experiences are exposed through our system, we have to consider that Microsoft's brand requirements are always in view, just like any other consumer company would want their end user experience to be branded. In other words, we wouldn't want someone coming in not knowing it was Teams, right? Or not, right? Or not knowing it was Xbox. In the case of those apps, I do want to just note something you may not be aware of, which is even though I can't go and grant Teams a customized sign-up experience, if I can create a sign-up portal or a sign-up app in my directory that grants access to external users, and those users can then be managed as guests and can be provided guest access in Teams. So in other words, if I have a user who signs up to my tenant, for example, the social identity comes in as a Google user or a Facebook user, there is an entry made in the directory for that user, and that user, in fact, is a guest in the system, can be managed like any other guest, and can also be a member of channels and teams, just like any other guest could be. They can be invited by your internal users. They can have policy applied to them. So, in fact, we've demonstrated that working with SharePoint and with Teams as of last year's build. So that capability is available, but the sign-up flow itself is specific to the app.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I think that we already described quite some benefits for IT and business, but through different questions. Maybe we can just recap, in your opinion, what are the main benefits for IT and business through all these features for guest management?
Would you like to take that one, Elisabeth?
Sure. So kind of just like, why should IT use these features in the first place to manage their guest users? Correct. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we hear from customers over and over again is they need tools in order to keep on top of their guest accounts. Most of our customers are working at pretty large scale, and it's just not possible for them to even understand who are all these people that have shown up. And as B2B as a kind of democratized who can collaborate and who can invite people in, you still need tools to figure out where did these people come from and what do they need to do here, and are they still necessary? And so having our governance tools like access reviews and entitlement management allows admins to do that overview at scale and have that management at scale in a way that's really effective and easy to use, and allows them to delegate out some of the decisions to the people who actually know what decision to make. So allowing group owners to decide, hey, this guest user doesn't need to be in the group anymore, and so they should get removed. But doing that automatically, so it's not one review per guest or per group, but one review for the tenant, and then each guest owner or group owner makes the right decision about the guests that are in their group. And I think the scale is the really powerful part about all of our governance features, is that we're not thinking about how do you manage this user, but how do you manage the whole group of guests that you have and make sure the right things happen for all of them.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, yes, exactly. The goal is to enable the business to be more independent without blocking them ultimately. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And there's always that tension, how do I trust that the end users are doing the right thing?
Exactly.
But also, I don't want to look at everything the end users are doing. And yes. So having these tools and policies in place helps a lot with that tension.
Yeah, because I think today sorry, Robin.
Oh, I was just going to say in addition to what Elisabeth was just mentioning, I think there's a benefit in terms of not just automation, but promoting better kind of user behavior, especially, and this is especially important in terms of security posture, because the more automatic things are, the more easy it becomes to interact with the correct security and governance policies in the background. Users won't try to work around it. You won't have like what we had in the old days of writing your password down on Post-its and having them across your desk, or if it's too much of a hassle to get approved for collaboration, you just email the docs out. I mean, these are bad behaviors that we've probably all done at some point in our life just to get something accomplished. And so the point here about reducing friction and creating automation while giving power to and control to the managers to know what's going on is really the key to getting our end users to have better behavior with the system and with valuable content as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you here, because I think decentralization doesn't come from the fact that IT, they want to be the bad guys saying, okay, we want to block everyone, but because there was a missing tool set, and now with this kind of features, they can have more confidence in enabling this kind of scenarios.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the IT is always seen as the boogeyman in the organizations, but it is true that the IT department normally stands for a very small percentage of the size of the organization, and with that in mind, it is true that all the different features that you bring around identity governance and everything has its management tools that are obviously focused and targeted towards the IT. But I guess that they are also built in mind to ease that end user life. Do you define those features also around what the experience can become to the end user? And how do you actually educate the IT departments into using those tools that are there in order to make that experience better for the end users?
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance, and I can give you a recent example, and this is a feature that's actually in preview with our friends in Microsoft Teams. So they have a feature out there called shared channels or team shared channels, and I think they're branding that under the name Teams Connect or Teams Direct Connect. And this is a feature that we have spent a lot of time, both in identity and in Teams, educating our customers about. One of the main drivers for this particular feature was, in fact, the end user experience of having to switch tenants. So, you may know this, from the way you work with your own clients, is that you have sometimes be.
That's a topic for another podcast.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you may sometimes have to be members of multiple tenants, sometimes, maybe dozens of tenants.
Yeah.
And if you're using a system, for example, like Microsoft Teams, where we're all, gathering today, and you have to switch that context many times a day, or in some cases you can't even sort of consume notifications and so forth because you aren't in the correct context. That becomes a real usability problem. It's not about security or governance at that point. It's a real usability problem, and it gets in the way of productivity. So one of the main reasons that we and the Teams group had partnered to kind of enable the shared channels experience was in fact to eliminate that tenant switch and to eliminate that sort of barrier to user productivity. And one of the things that's been interesting throughout this conversation and designing that feature is that as we speak with customers, that notion of improving the user experience really resonates with them. Everybody wants to get rid of that problem. They're totally motivated, but that behooves us to still kind of make sure that we can guarantee the same level of manageability and governance, and that always becomes the balance. As long as you can do both, then you have a winner for both the IT department and the end users.
Of course. And I think also that today, you mentioned before also the fact that, for example, for the approvals, we can plug into an API and actually, let's say, plug in the middle of the flow to actually control this validation of the external invitations. So I think other clients, many clients actually are managing these kind of exceptions with custom flows or custom applications. Is there anything in the roadmap from Microsoft to fill some gaps, let's say, like the approvals or other envisioned features maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the features that we have in general availability right now, and I mentioned it, API connectors, where we raise an event on sign up. That is one mechanism that can be used, to call out to bespoke systems that some of our customers, may be using. Obviously, we'd love to encourage our customers to also use the entitlements management that's native in the Microsoft system. But we know there's a lot of different onboarding processes and a lot of different internal automation. So that's one of the features we have today. And then we are extending some of the work that we've done around extensibility with B2C to the Azure AD auth pipeline in general. So you can anticipate there'll be more extensibility points in the future where other processes can then hook the user flows that we have.
Okay, and one point on information flows and workflows is the fact that more and more we've seen countries and continents. So talking about GDPR for the European Union, there's a very big, I would say, requirement on providers, on solution providers like Microsoft to really make their products compliant across the board, so that organizations in Europe and in the US and wherever rules and policies and however they're applied, they might use those things in a restful way, not being fearful of someone knocking the door and coming with some audits and some fines. Do you feel that with all these features coming around external collaboration, do you feel that today an external user can still have a good visibility on the information that is being shared across the tenants, that he's a guest? And can he have full control on when to leave that tenant and when to kind of remove that information?
Yeah, I want to make one statement, and then I think Elisabeth probably has the best detail to share on this. Just, all of Microsoft's systems are compliant, from a privacy perspective. This is something, we spend a lot of time ensuring, and when, new regulations come along like GDPR, and now we see Schrems coming on in Europe, this is something we take very, very seriously. And, we work to make sure that compliance is engineered into our systems, and as far as local data residency, like those are areas where we're continuously investing, just to make sure that all of our systems operate in a compliant manner. With respect to guest visibility, I think Elisabeth's probably got the best viewpoint on that.
Yeah, sure. So every guest user can look at their profile experience, and that'll show them which tenants they're a part of and give them experience for how to leave that tenant, which will remove their data as part of the leave process. So we do give those controls to end users as well to manage their accounts, so that both because of privacy regulations, and also because it's a better user experience to be able to manage your account that way. So those capabilities are already there and have been there for several years as well.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And when we talk about all these features, and they sound amazing, by the way. I mean, I think it's again, if those IT departments know what to do with those management tools, with those governance tools. How does this work? How much does it cost? How can I get these type of features in my tenant? What do I need to do as an IT admin?
Yeah, are you speaking particularly about the governance and management aspects?
Yeah, most of the features that we talked here, sign up experience, talking a lot about this type of tools, part of the identity governance of Microsoft. Is this something that someone without premium type of licenses can have, or does this require some type of an upgrade?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the premium requirements?
Sure. Yeah. This kind of ties into the MAU-based subscription model as well. So Robin will correct me where I get parts of that wrong. But so for the governance capabilities like access reviews and entitlement management, that's a P2 license. And the way we express that is that you need to have every user who's interacting with those features. So like who's doing the review or who's being assigned access through entitlement management needs to be licensed at that P2 level. But then when you talk about your guest users using those features, that's where the MAU-based billing and subscription model becomes really interesting, because the subscription model has a free 50,000 users I don't know how we refer to that, like introduction or something like that.
It's it's an entry level tier. So effectively, your first 50,000 users each month are counted as free users with respect to authentications. So you've got the management piece, which needs to be licensed, and then you've got the usage piece, which is a consumption-based service. And if that consumption stays low, then you don't really pay anything. And as it goes higher, then you pay per user.
Yeah, and so we do have some customers who are using that to say they have P2 licenses for their employee users that are managing their guest onboarding process, but then their usage from their guests themselves generally stays below that 50,000 barrier, and so then they don't actually have to spend very much to get a really strong governance set up for their tenant.
Just to clarify the concept about monthly active usage. So monthly active usage is about any user with authentication activity in a calendar month. Just to define the.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
And I remember hearing about a ratio of 1 to 5 when it comes to P1s and P2s.
For the features,
There's always, this is also always something very weird to our customers, sometimes hard to understand. How does it work, this ratio?
Well, we consider that a sort of the legacy approach to pricing for. So what Elisabeth mentioned, which is a usage-based model, is actually a replacement for that. So we have some customers who are familiar with the 1:5, and the way that worked was for every one full license that you have in a directory, you would have up to 5 external users without requiring any purchase of additional licenses. And you're right, it has been confusing to many of our customers, and it's one of the reasons that we are migrating to this usage-based model, and also going back to this discussion we were having about convergence, where we're finding that the line between external users is blurring. It's starting to blur for a number of our customers between what is a customer and what is a partner and what is a guest. Right. And our aim is to simplify the model, that you license your members and that your guest users are metered based on usage. So we're really just trying to simplify it in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, for me it's interesting to see how all these features go together. For example, from the invitation, when the user is in the tenant, granting access, reviewing the access with the access review feature that Elisabeth mentioned before, and then also having maybe temporary or dynamic groups that I can use to add automatically the user. Yeah. So I think Azure AD is a full-fledged EIM platform that today can be leveraged for any use case, either from the EIM standpoint for standard tenant B2B, let's say, and then for consumer use cases on the B2C type.
But again, I mean, I think you're completely right, but that goes with the well-trained IT departments in our customers, and that's why companies like us exist, to actually help them in managing and govern their infrastructure. If we were to ask you directly, where can they get more information about the feature roadmap of this type of features coming in, and also some kind of best practices, documentation, what would that be?
We do have our Microsoft 365 roadmap is published. So if you can point them to our Microsoft 365 roadmap, and you can search on the Azure AD or Azure Active Directory section of that, and that's one place you can get, more or less a 6 to 12 month viewpoint on what's coming on the roadmap. We have a lot of activity on our Azure Active Directory blog on Microsoft's tech community as well. So if you follow the Azure Active Directory blog, Alex Simons, our corporate vice president for product management, is the main publisher on that blog. But I also do some entries on that blog where we talk about external identities features in particular. So those are two good sources of information, as far as what's coming.
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for having joined us in this podcast. It was really great to have you. I don't know if you would like to have just a few words.
I'll just say thanks for having us on as well. I've really enjoyed our time, and this has been a really fun conversation. And also I'll plug my Twitter. I'm on Twitter as Elisol, Elisol. And if anybody wants to reach out to me there, I'm always happy to make connections with folks and answer questions or get feedback directly. It's nice to have that direct channel to anyone who has feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add my thanks, and I'm really excited about the enthusiasm that the two of you are showing for our Microsoft platform and what we're doing in external identities. I know that just gets me even more excited about the work we're doing, just to know that folks like you out there are trying to educate well our shared customers, and also just understanding some of the criticality around these management pieces, when it comes to external users in an organization. I'm probably more of a LinkedIn person, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter handle at RobinGo_MS is me. So RobinGo_MS, but happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn as well. And I do, again, share Elisabeth's enthusiasm. This was a fun conversation for us, and really appreciate you having us as guests and inviting Microsoft to share.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it doesn't happen every day to have Microsoft to be talking directly, because we always have many questions and ideas, and now today we have the opportunity to deep dive and go a little bit further on this topic. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it was really great. And thanks to our audience. We'll catch you back again with a third podcast.
Right.
Maybe again with Microsoft, maybe about Teams multi-tenant experience. We'll see. Maybe Robin started here a nice trend. So thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Great.